1.2. Of course, there's a shortcoming in the 1.0 version. Number one is the very low level of the living standard for all, for everybody, and the very slow improvement of living standard in order to accumulate more. So one of the Hong Kong colleagues just published this book. The subtitle is more interesting title. Was Chairman Mao really necessary? And his answer, of course, is necessary. Without a material foundation laid by Mao, it would be very difficult for Deng to launch his reform and open door policy. Now, come to the point 2.0. The background was 温饱阶段. The people are adequately fit and have clothes, maybe not very fancy clothes, but they have clothes nevertheless. The GDP per capita moved from 1,000 to 4,000. So the goal changed. When per capita GDP are now a certain biologically minimum standard of living, the priority of Socialism 2.0 shifts first to reduce remaining poverty on the one hand, and the second, to increase private income consumption for most people on another. The institution changed from the public ownership to mixed ownership. This you can see the change ownership in terms of GDP. In 1978, it's dominated by public ownership, even though the state ownership only accounted for slightly more than half. But by 2005, both has become a minority. And planning is no longer called 计划, it's called 规划. In English, it's still planning, but 计划 and 规划 different. The meaning in Chinese is quite different. One is mandatory planning, another is indicative planning. So planning is still there, but mostly market allocate resources. The welfare system is no longer works during this period because the soft budget constraint removed, become a hard budget constraint, and the people's relationship with their unit become quite unstable. It's based on the contract. It can be laid off at any time. This is the period many people experience enormous degree of insecurity, economically and socially. Of course, this achievement, one is the poverty reduction. You can see the poverty has been reduced substantially throughout the period. And the GDP growth was quite respectable. And then the problem is, of course, number one, growing inequality, measured by Gini coefficient, with or without the cost of living adjustment, is all moving up. And the state during this period withdrew from the provision of many of the basic human welfare. This is one case is healthcare. You can see during between 1986 to year 2001, essentially people have to pay healthcare out of the pocket. Now, since 2002, I would suggest China has been in the process of searching for socialism 3.0, the background change. And the necessity for a new round of search was pretty simple. Once most people are already well fit, well clothed, marginal utility of private disposable income and consumption would diminish it. Due to this diminishing marginal utility of private income and private consumption, it's desirable to shift resources to public spending and to redistribute income from wealthy to poor citizens. And I think this is what has been happening. Basic institution, mixed ownership, I would say is advancement of both public and private ownership. In China, in the recent months, there's been debate about 国进民退, and I would say it's both 国进民进. And I can show just one case. This is Chongqing. I have spent some time on this case of Chongqing. You can see advancement of the state sector from 2002 to 2009. dramatically. I mean, increased dramatically. But in the meantime, proportionally, the non-state sector is still growing. It's still growing. So both has been advanced. And in terms of the market, and it's still working, but indicative and strategic planning is still play important role. China just finished draft is the 12th five-year plan, and many thousands of experts and tens of thousands of officials and millions of people have been involved in the process, which shows how important the plan still is. And finally, the welfare system change. There's no more unit base. It's a social welfare. People on the one hand pay the taxes, on the other hand receive social assistance, social insurance, and public services. And I just give you some example. One is healthcare. Since 2001, Chinese government began its new round of healthcare reform. You can see the proportion of out-of-pocket payment has declined substantially from 60% to 38% by 2009. Last year, I'm pretty sure it's much lower, and the government target at 30% in near future. Another example is regional disparities. I published a number of books on regional disparities. In late 1990s, I found was alarming, the growing the gap. But since 2004, we can see the gap actually has been narrowing. In the space of a few years, the gap has been narrowing. And overall, I think the three version of socialism has worked relatively well. This is the comparison of HDI, Human Development Index, with number of countries in number of years. You can see in 1950, China, India was pretty low in terms of HDI. But by 2005, China's HDI is about the same level as the Russian and Brazil, which used to be much higher than China's level. So let me conclude by citing a colleague of mine, a friend of mine, Lin Chun, professor at London School of Economics. He said that Chinese socialism can best be grasped as a modern project that has sought to develop by its own unique means into its unique type, always conscious of another possibilities it has refused to eliminate. That is the Soviet-style bureaucratic socialism, as well as the diverse form of preferably capitalism. So according to her, and I think I share her view, the chance of Chinese model to success cannot be ruled out. I didn't say it's great, but it cannot be ruled out. That's the conclusion. Thank you.
Thank you very much.